Oh.
Hello,
Richard.
welcome to the last session, everyone. It's been a fantastic and a wonderful couple of days. We are the organizing team minus one of our team members, Patricia Paradis, who you've probably heard can't be here, and we're certainly thinking of her and sending her our best. And so grateful that to take us home in this final session of reflections will be in the steady, capable hands of Professor Richard Albert. So Richard, I'll hand the floor over to you and look forward to you driving us home.
Bienvenue à tous et à toutes. Alors, nous voici aujourd'hui arrivés au terme de cette grande conférence. Une conférence durant laquelle, pendant 2 jours, des intervenants et participants au travers du Canada et du monde se sont rassemblés pour discuter et débattre des origines et des héritages du rapatriement de la Constitution du Canada. Welcome, everyone. My name is Richard Albert. I'm one of the co-organizers for this conference. And today I'm standing on the campus of the University of Texas at Austin, located on the indigenous lands of the Tonkawa. Their careful stewardship of these grounds has made it possible for me and so many others to live a life of learning and discovery. And for that, I'm grateful. Vous connaissez déjà les membres du comité organisateur, Eric Adams, Alain-Gagnon, Valerie Lapointe-Gagnon, Carissima Mathen, et bien sûr, Patricia Paradis. Malheureusement, Patricia n'est pas en mesure de se joindre à nous aujourd'hui, mais elle nous a envoyé un petit message de sa part pour vous tous. Je vais faire de mon mieux de vous le lire d'une façon dont Patricia serait fière, j'espère. I would have loved to join you today. When we were planning the conference, I thought having several centers across Canada planning this conference to mark the 40th anniversary of patriation and the Charter would be important in terms of ensuring that we dealt with several points of view. A way of bringing the country together constitutionally, so to speak. The result has been a fruitful, beautiful collaboration. The presentations have all been excellent and have exposed many of the intended and unintended consequences of patriation 40 years later. We're left with much to think about. Thank you, Pat. If you're watching, you should all know that Pat was the driving force behind this conference. She's an extraordinary leader, an extraordinary organizer, and most of all, an extraordinary person. Maintenant, j'ai une grande responsabilité. C'est à moi qu'il incombe d'animer une courte discussion avec ceux et celles qui ont organisé cette conférence. Alors, une première question pour vous tous, pour déclencher notre discussion. Quand nous nous sommes rassemblés pour mettre en œuvre notre plan pour cette conférence, quels étaient les objectifs, vos objectifs pour cet événement? Commençons avec Valérie.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Richard. Merci à toutes ceux et celles qui ont participé là, pendant les 2 derniers jours qui ont été très intenses. Pour ma part, j'ai une perspective un peu distincte peut-être de mes collègues parce que je suis historienne. Donc, ce qui m'intéresse, c'est de comprendre la racine des événements, les racines historiques, le contexte historique, comment ça s'est passé, les acteurs impliqués, voir les traces aussi qui ont été laissées. Puis, on l'a vu au cours des derniers jours, ça a été beaucoup un mouvement d'élite, en fait, ce mouvement de rapatriement. Les groupes minoritaires ont eu de la difficulté à faire entendre leur voix. On a parlé des femmes aujourd'hui, on a parlé des Autochtones également, des minorités francophones, si je pense à la conférence de Stéphanie Chouinard et de son étudiante. Et tout ça a eu des conséquences par la suite qui ont bien été exposées dans les derniers jours. Donc, les conséquences des choix qui ont été faits. Je crois que c'est ce qui m'intéressait, l'échange changement de culture politique aussi, de voir comment on est passé dans les années 60. Si je prends les années de la Commission royale d'enquête sur le bilinguisme et le biculturalisme, la Constitution, le débat constitutionnel était tellement proche des gens. On avait des assemblées de cuisine, on avait des assemblées de sous-sol. Ça s'est transposé par la suite dans des grands événements avant rapatriement. Je pense au colloque Congrès Destiné Canada à Toronto en 1977 qui a attiré des citoyens partout à travers le pays pour définir ce qu'ils voulaient de leur constitution. Et je pense que c'est Patrick Moynihan qui rappelait hier à quel point Bob Rae avait mentionné que c'était important que les gens puissent s'approprier ce processus-là. Mais on a créé une certaine distance aussi, puis c'est ça qui a ressorti des conversations aussi des derniers jours, la distance constitutionnelle, la fatigue constitutionnelle de l'après-82, puis comment, en rendant le processus de modification constitutionnelle très, très fermé, on a cadenassé la Constitution, comment ça l'avait éloigné les citoyens du débat constitutionnel. Mais j'ai senti de l'espoir aujourd'hui aussi avec une conférence comme celle de Catherine Mathieu qui montrait comment on essaie de contourner aussi les façons traditionnelles de transformer la Constitution. Il y a beaucoup de projets sur la table, donc il y a beaucoup de créativité constitutionnelle, mais cette créativité-là semble appartenir davantage à une poignée d'experts. Donc, comment ramener la Constitution plus proche des gens, les débats constitutionnels près des citoyens, les intéresser, les stimuler. Je pense que c'est des bonnes perspectives d'avenir, puis c'est des choses qui ont été abordées. Donc, c'était mes objectifs résumés en 3-4 minutes, je crois. Merci, Richard.
Carissima, Mathen, what were your objectives when we sought out together to plan and execute this conference?
Thank you, Richard, and hello to everyone. I was hoping that we could use this as an opportunity to reflect on patriation, but to very much ground it in the moment we are all experiencing in our world, in our nation, in our community, which I think it's fair to say is an unsettling world. It's a world where we are confronted with some of the fragility of our underlying systems and norms. And that's why I thought it was important to have the theme of conflict as a recognition of our current reality. And I was really gratified by the number of presentations that were quite clear-eyed about the disappointments and failings of patriation for certain groups, and were really quite sharply putting forward a vision of constitutionalism in Canada that challenges many of those preconceptions and those assumptions that have governed us now for 40 years. I don't think a number of the papers we heard in the last 2 days would have been offered even 10 years ago, even perhaps 5 years ago. And that, I think, is really a product of how the Canadian state has evolved in the last several years and the expectations that we have of it. And I'm thinking, of course, particularly of issues around Indigenous governance and the ruling orders that frame our law, right? Our fundamental social constructs and agreements. But other issues as well in terms of linguistic minorities and fundamentals, and the way that we conceptualize how to change these norms. So many of the papers on amendment. So I think that while conflict it's an uncomfortable topic, it is inescapable. And that is why, I was happy that we foregrounded that a bit. And I really think that it came through in so many of the presentations.
Thank you. What about you, Eric? Your objectives when we gathered to plan this conference, what did you have in mind?
One of the things that has always drawn me to the Center for Constitutional Studies, and then by extension, the other centers that have collaborated in this project, was the idea that the best way to understand constitutionalism and our constitutional moments is a multidisciplinary one. And I think that lawyers sometimes like to lay claim to the Constitution in a special way and grab hold of it. And sometimes we are inclined to narrow our gaze to our own experience in a way that I think distorts and really misses some crucial constitutional aspects of that broader constitutional culture. And so the center, I think, is a place, and this conference has proven to be a place, where the bringing together of historians and political scientists and lawyers and sociologists and others from across the spectrum, and then across language groups and across other countries, has really shown us the level of maturity that Canadian constitutional studies has reached. And I think you could not have attended these last 2 days and feel that this wasn't a vibrant, thriving field. And one of the things I was hoping for this event is that I would get the experience that I had. And so we've certainly delivered what I was hoping for.
Et maintenant, vous, Alain, vos objectifs pour vous et pour votre centre?
En fait, moi, l'intention, c'était de collaborer de façon encore plus étroite avec les collègues à l'échelle du pays et plus largement. C'était aussi de démontrer qu'il y avait un intérêt important pour les enjeux constitutionnels. On dit souvent que la Constitution, ça intéresse peu de gens, mais on voit très bien qu'il y a beaucoup d'intérêt. Il faut simplement prendre le temps d'explorer les différentes questions, les différents enjeux. Et ça va de la petite enfance jusqu'aux personnes âgées. Et donc, on a senti à travers ces quelques jours d'échange que ces questions-là étaient au cœur des préoccupations des citoyens. L'idée aussi d'avoir la possibilité de confronter nos points de vue. C'est certain qu'on aurait voulu être tous à Edmonton. Bon, on y est tous de cœur. Mais en même temps, on a pu discuter assez franchement, je dirais. La discussion a été franche tout au long des échanges et de voir ensemble interagir la jeune génération et les générations plus avancées en âge. Ça aussi, ça me fait plaisir. J'ai commencé ma carrière à Kingston en 1982. Alors, on peut imaginer que quand j'étais à Queens, déjà déjà on est en train de discuter des enjeux constitutionnels et ça m'a toujours suivi et j'ai le sentiment qu'aujourd'hui c'est encore plus riche les débats qu'on peut avoir. Donc il y a eu tout un système de citoyennisation, si on veut, où les gens sont prêts à parler de constitution. On a des visions très distinctes de ce que ça représente ou ce que ça pourrait représenter. Et donc, ça a été une chance d'en discuter ouvertement. Puis j'en profite naturellement pour remercier tous les centres avec qui ont collaboré à l'activité, en particulier, bon, toi, Richard, et aussi Patricia, qui a été la fer de lance de toute l'initiative. Et nous, on s'est ralliés, on a rejoint le projet, puis on est très heureux, puis on espère qu'il va y avoir une véritable suite, publication en français et en anglais éventuellement.
Merci Alain. J'ai 3 autres toutes petites questions. Alors, let's go to Carissima. Carissima, what does patriation mean to you, whether as a scholar, as a Canadian? And has your view grown in new directions as a result of what you've heard and learned and discussed at this conference?
So to me, patriation has been a moment, not the moment, a moment of constituting Canada as a nation in its development. And it is a really powerful moment involving various actors, both in the Federation, but also various actors of the state, coming together in these really interesting ways. So the role of the Supreme Court, the role of citizens groups, the dynamics among the federal actors, the premiers and the prime minister, but to produce this constitutive event that has fundamentally, I think it's fair to say, altered the trajectory of the country. That being said, what I have learned, and particularly what was brought home for me in this conference, were because we have the frequent story of the night of the long knives and the particular marginalization of Quebec. But there were other stories that I was introduced to, particularly around the role of Indigenous groups and the way that they were portrayed in ways that were not accurate, and the failings of moments, provisions that would have been received popularly as quite positive, but actually, when you delve beneath the surface, were problematic. So issues around Section 35, for example. So I still hold to that view of the profound importance of patriation, but I have been educated about a number of the things that sort of roil beneath the surface of that.
Valérie, vous, ça veut dire quoi, le rapatriement de la Constitution?
C'est une excellente question. C'est sûr que ma position en tant que Québécoise, le rapatriement, quand j'ai grandi, suivi des cours d'histoire, ça a toujours été associé à une trahison, à la nuit des longs couteaux, donc à un moment qui a un impact négatif au Québec. Maintenant, je suis devenue une chercheuse, j'ai un regard différent, plus nuancé sur la situation, puis aussi en étant en francophonie minoritaire, en travaillant au campus francophone de l'Université de l'Alberta, on voit à quel point le rapatriement puis l'insertion d'une charte a été important pour les communautés francophones en milieu minoritaire avec l'article 23. Puis, ce que j'ai appris aussi dans les derniers jours, ça rejoint un peu ce que ma collègue Carissima disait, c'est sur les questions autochtones, les enjeux autochtones, le manque d'écoute des voix autochtones à l'époque du rapatriement, le caractère inachevé aussi du processus, comment on a dépeint certaines communautés, la section 35, évidemment, puis comment il y a des parallèles à faire aussi entre la situation des francophones en milieu minoritaire qui se battent pour leurs droits, qui des fois sont coincés entre le gouvernement fédéral, provincial qui se renvoie la balle, puis ça crée une paralysie, vraiment. Et je sais que Naomi Metallic parlait de ça hier, de cette paralysie-là, comment on n'est pas capable d'arriver à cette entente sur le besoin d'avoir un gouvernement autonome pour les nations autochtones. Donc, ces deux situations, ça demanderait plus de nuances pour les comparer, mais on voit aussi à quel point le processus a mené à une certaine paralysie des gouvernements provinciaux qui en vient à nuire aux communautés, à certaines communautés. Donc, je pense que ça a été une discussion qui a été très enrichissante sur ces enjeux-là. Puis, à quel point aussi c'est une œuvre inachevée. Je pense à la conférence de François Larocque et de Darius Bossé sur la traduction qui a été faite et qui devait être faite dans les plus brefs délais de ces documents juridiques et qui n'a jamais été adoptée. Donc, il y a plein de trous encore à combler, à discuter. Donc, il faut que le sujet constitutionnel reste proche des citoyens.
Merci Valérie. Eric, what about you?
I'll just briefly say that this conference made me think a lot about two quotes that rumble around in my head a fair bit. One is Frank Scott, who used to say that before patriation, he would say that we have a rendezvous with the BNA Act, was one of his lines. This idea that our constitutional project remains unfinished, and that the process of living together in a constitutional manner is a process always of revisiting our fundamental laws. And Dick Risk, RCB Risk, who has written on Canadian constitutional thought, Risk says there's no still point in Canadian constitutional thought. And I was thinking of both those things, listening to the various perspectives on patriation, and the sense that I think, as Carissima has mentioned, that although it stands as a moment, it's actually just a moment in a process that continues to unfold. It set in motion certain processes, but those processes remain ongoing, most notably, obviously, in relation to Quebec's exclusion and to the inadequate treatment of Indigenous peoples in our founding documents. And so I feel like, to quote Scott, we have a rendezvous with patriation that I think is still coming.
Alain?
Perhaps to build on what Eric was saying, well, for me, 1982 or the patriation definitely means that Canada was trying to open a new chapter in its own constitutional journey. But at the same time, this opening of a new chapter meant that Canada was turning its back on its own historical foundation. I think this is something that I think needs to be regretted. And we need to find a better way, in fact, we need to take a higher road to politics instead of what I have called in the past imposed federalism. I think we need to change our attitude and move forward with a more negotiated federalism that will build on political engagement, that will keep the channel open, that will be there to respect all partners in the federation. And what I see in Ottawa and in most provincial capital is the sort of a refusal to engage into serious negotiation. And I think what we've seen during the last 2 days has been a desire on the part of political scientists, on the part of lawyers, philosophers, that in fact there's road and room for discussion. And none of us aspire to have a static federation, but we want to have a dynamic federation where participatory democracy is there to avoid frustration and disenfranchisement. Guy Laforest spoke in a recent text with Yannick Dubois about reconciliatory federalism. I think this is probably the best way to formulate what I've seen during the last few days. A desire to reach out to one another, a federalism of convergence. I think this is what patriation means to me at the moment, having listened to so many good presentations and from so many talented people. So there is a way there for constitutional deliberation, or how you will formulate that probably, Richard. So patriation means a lot. Imposed federalism versus negotiated federalism, static federalism versus dynamic federalism, or competing federalism versus a federalism that will be much more reconciliatory.
Thank you, Alain. A question now for Eric and for all of you. What are some of your most memorable moments from the last 2 days of this conference? We can all agree that it was all spectacular, but you may have 1 or 2 moments that you'd like to identify.
It's hard to do, Richard, but I thought your session with Justice Monahan and Professor Cameron really set us off in a good way yesterday in linking so many of the themes of the conference in terms of the combination of ideas and the practical politics of constitution making and the intermixture of those realities in how we experience constitutional change in Canada. I thought those touched on important and enduring themes. And then, as is so often the case, the outsider's gaze. Professor Saunders' remarks at the end of the day, which I thought placed that Canada in that long history of our constitution making and the questions and the deep problems around our not problems, but questions that remain at the heart of sovereignty, and how Canada stands up in contrast with Australia. And then this morning I was able to, I'll end here, to have an outstanding session with Professor Jean Leclerc on some of the future possibilities of recognizing Indigenous self-government. So I'll end there.
Alain, what about you?
Well, there was many highlights. We just listened to John White, incredible presentation with his own personal experience, very philosophical, but at the same time very practical. So in the end, I mean, I don't entirely share his view, because I would have preferred not to patriate without the presence of Quebec and the Aboriginal. But for him, well, when push comes to shove, the nation first. And so I like his genuine presentation and his very, very practical way at looking at things, and his honest understanding of the situation. But it doesn't change the situation of unfair condition that in which took place. And this morning also, to echo what was just said, Jean Leclerc did a great presentation. In fact, I would say this was a world-class speech. This is probably the best text I heard from Jean from many, many years now. I've known him on the Aboriginal, and I wish Jean was to be as open and supportive of the Quebec position within Canada as he is for the First Nation, because he will be a great advocate of the Aboriginal people and trying to transpose that on the Quebec terrain. So all in all, great discovery. Catherine Mathieu, Dave Gannett, Antoine Brousseau-Desaulniers, Radha Perso, I mean, they were all really, everyone was prepared for this event.
Carissima.
So I'm not going to repeat any of the suggestions that were just made. I agree with them all. I'm going to be very brief, actually. I thought for me, the most special moment was hearing from Peter Russell. He's such a giant. And I just thought he gave a really humane talk. And I felt really lucky to hear that.
Thank you for that. Valerie.
Je vais être brève aussi. En tant que femme qui s'intéresse à des sujets souvent masculins, là, la Constitution, les questions politiques, on se retrouve souvent entouré d'hommes, puis de voir une relève de jeunes femmes, de jeunes constitutionnalistes, de jeunes politologues qui maîtrisent ces sujets-là avec brio. J'ai trouvé ça extrêmement inspirant. Je ne peux pas toutes les nommer, mais Catherine Mathieu, Stéphanie Chouinard, Geneviève Painter, Naomi Metallic. Je veux dire, pour moi, de voir cette communauté-là de jeunes femmes qui prend sa place, ça m'a beaucoup touchée et j'ai trouvé ça inspirant.
Alors, une dernière question maintenant avant de clore notre discussion. Maintenant, c'est pour Alain. Qu'est-ce que vous prévoyez au cours de 10 ou 15 prochaines années pour la Constitution du Canada?
Wow, ben ça dépend si on lit les présentations qui ont été faites par Daniel Turp. Là, on est dans une situation de confrontation plutôt importante. Ça dépend si on regarde les travaux qui ont été apportés par Catherine Mathieu. On est plus sur des positions de négociation et d'ouverture. Même chose avec Stéphanie Chouinard. Donc, j'ai l'impression que la jeune génération est plus ouverte à un fédéralisme négocié d'ouverture, plutôt que d'essayer d'avoir une corde tendue entre les protagonistes au sein de la fédération. Mais quoi qu'il en soit, il demeure que une des plus grandes contributions de la Constitution canadienne, c'est la Charte canadienne des droits et des libertés. Moi, mon rêve, ça aurait été d'avoir une Charte québécoise des droits et libertés comme nous l'avons depuis 1975, d'avoir la Charte canadienne des droits et des libertés depuis 82, mais que l'une et l'autre puissent agir sur des territoires distincts au sein d'une fédération multinationale. Et j'aimerais donc que les Premières Nations elles-mêmes imaginent une Charte des droits et des libertés où ils peuvent s'affirmer, se projeter. Et là, on aurait une véritable fédération multinationale. Mais on n'est pas sur ce terrain. Je n'ai pas l'impression que les Canadiens vont aller sur ce terrain-là.
Carissima, what do you see ahead for Canada, the Constitution of Canada, in the next 10, 15 years?
Well, I think we're going to have an existential moment around Section 33 and the place of the notwithstanding clause, the interpretation of it. What, if any, are the limits, either politically, legally, juridically? I think that's coming. And I think we'll also have some real conversations about formal change of the Constitution, at least in the sense of what is possible, because I think there are pressures building that are not going to easily be put off for much longer. So that's what I see.
Valerie?
Oui, moi, je regarde souvent plus vers le passé que vers l'avenir par des formations professionnelles, mais j'ai en tête une phrase de Jean-Charles Bonenfant qui disait dans les années 60, la Constitution de 1867, elle ne s'applique plus à 1960. Donc, il faut quelque chose qui évolue. Puis, j'ai beaucoup apprécié ce qu'Alain a dit, hein, garder les canaux de conversation ouverts, rétablir ces mécanismes démocratiques-là. C'était le rêve de Laurent Dunton, le rêve des années 60, quand on imaginait cette nouvelle constitution, ce Canada moderne, entré dans son deuxième centenaire. Donc, c'est plus un souhait que je veux formuler, puis il rejoint celui d'Alain, c'est d'amener ces canaux-là, de les créer, de faire en sorte que le pays puisse évoluer aussi avec les Canadiens, les Canadiennes, comment ils évoluent. Il y a beaucoup de transformations, donc il faut aussi que la Constitution soit capable de refléter plus aisément ces transformations-là.
Mm-hmm. Eric.
Well, maybe I'll mention two hopes. Hope number one is that when we get together to discuss the Constitution, there would be a glass of wine and we could have a conversation not on a screen. That's my first wish for our constitutional future. So let's say that at 50, we will have failed if we're doing this over this platform. I will say, secondly, that, and this is, I think, to echo some of what my colleagues have mentioned, is that I sincerely hope that it remains a site of reasonable disagreement. And we need disagreement in our politics. Our Constitution is not to remove disagreement from the polity, but it's to channel it in productive ways in which it's able to maintain its force as a legitimate instrument to deal with disagreement. And I feel that sometimes we are losing the threads of that important aspect of constitutionalism, including in some of the rhetoric at the Supreme Court of Canada, in which the judges are accusing themselves more sharply than they have previously about unconstitutionality. I would like us to put civility back into our constitutional politics so that we can disagree well together.
Thank you.
What about you, Richard?
Before we close, our most important task, I think, as conference organizers is to say thank you. Thank you to all who've made this conference possible, beginning with Zara Ahmed. Zara has been indispensable to the success of the conference. And so I'm going to ask all of the people on the panel now to unmute yourself so we can clap out loud for Zara. Thank you, Zara, for all you've done to make this conference the success that it has been, largely thanks to you. Thanks also to Vanessa McDonnell, co-director of the Center for Public Law at the University of Ottawa, to Richard Maley, who helped with a number of items, giving rise to the successful SHIRT grant that has brought us together. And congratulations also to Richard, I believe, who's the incoming executive director of the center. Congratulations. To Alina Reitzma at the center for all her work, all your work. To a number of research assistants, to Ariana Murdoch-Fike, to Brad Smith, and to Lee Klippenstein. Thank you for all you've done working with Pat and with Zara and with Richard, everyone at the center. Thanks to you. And of course, to our leader, to Pat. Pat, hello, if you're watching. Thank you for all you've done. Speaking personally now, just for me, Pat, you are a great inspiration. You are a great example. You're a great person with beautiful vision, perfect execution, and a profoundly deep and intoxicating passion for the Constitution of Canada. Thank you, Pat, for these gifts that you've given to each of us. J'aimerais maintenant donner la parole à tour de rôle à chacun et chacune des membres du comité organisateur pour leurs propres remerciements, s'ils veulent en ajouter. On va commencer avec Valérie.
Oui, ben, je pense que tu as fait un bon tour d'horizon, Richard, mais merci à toi de nous avoir rassemblés. Je pense que la raison pour laquelle on est ici aujourd'hui, c'est parce que tu as souhaité créer cet événement-là. Donc, merci. Et moi aussi, je vais remercier Patricia, figure importante à l'université. Elle va grandement nous manquer avec son départ à la retraite. J'étais contente qu'elle vienne me chercher au campus Saint-Jean, d'amener un côté francophone aussi, francophone de l'Alberta, qu'on ne voit pas trop souvent. Donc, voilà.
Eric?
Oh, thanks to all, and especially to the participants who've stuck with us through 2 terrific days. And Richard, thank you. You've led us home beautifully, just as I knew you would.
This wasn't an invitation for thanks to me. It was really for, so thank you. Carissima, and then Alain.
I'd like to thank the members of the committee. It's been a real pleasure to work with you. And I'd like to thank everyone who submitted papers and attended and moderated. I'd like to thank those who were willing to moderate. It could not have happened without you. And just a special shout out to Pat Parody.
So,
Alain, bring us home.
So these rendezvous are going to be missed. I mean, I really enjoyed them. I discovered some colleague through this, the time that we spent together. And even if we're not very close with Edmonton physically, we've been close mentally. And the same thing with Ottawa. Oftentimes we feel with neighbors, but we're not so often together. So again, it's been a great time sharing these moments. So special thanks to Patricia, who invested so much time and energy on the application, and Valerie and Eric and Carissima and you, Richard, for all the work you've put into this. So yeah, a great time together, and thank you for everyone to have accompanied us in the process.
Alors, bonne 40e à la charte. Bonne 40e au rapatriement de la Constitution. Thank you to all. Merci 1000 fois. À la prochaine.
Au revoir.